Some of the things I've messed up while building and living in a cabin in the woods over the last 15 years. This side wall here was the first wall I framed. First thing I ever framed in my life. I ended up making the window openings 2 inches too narrow. Had to scrap the whole thing, tear it down and start over. Thought I was going to double up the use of my stone pillars for an addition on this end of the building. Then decided to pour concrete. So I ended up with stone pillars sticking out from the side of the building. Just realized I put this pair of joists cockeyed. They're closer to the end of the building on one end than the other. So I got to take them out and completely redo it. Left my good carpenter's pencil out in the open for just a few minutes, but that was more than enough time for Luna here to find it. Hey, Luna? Built these stone foundation pillars for this addition we're putting on our cabin, but for this one, I completely forgot to continue the stone all the way across. This foundation pillar completely missed its underground concrete footing by at least 3 or 4 inches. Windstorm just blew our gazebo right off our deck yesterday, damaged it, and scratched the composite decking surface terribly. Tried to bolt it down to the deck so it wouldn't happen again and put a hole in the wrong spot. Spent weeks planning the shape and size and dimensions of this back room addition we're putting on our cabin, only to discover that the roof line I have in mind is directly in line with this bottom peak of the existing roof, and it's totally messing things up. Installed another joist hanger in completely the wrong spot, had to pry it loose, completely destroyed the hanger. Miscalculated on the alignment of this cedar shingle wall siding, so that when I joined one wall to the other at the bottom here, the courses were mismatched and I have this stair-stepped look here on display for the world to see. Hired a guy with an excavator to dig out this hole for the addition we're putting on our cabin, thinking that it was all flat limestone bedrock, only to discover that there was a bunch of loose boulders which had to be removed, leading to this extremely uneven rock shelf. No idea how I'm going to pour concrete over this. Bored holes in these stone pillars and then used masonry epoxy and threaded rod to bolt the pillars to the beams up above for stability, only to have the masonry epoxy leak out the holes and permanently harden on the face of the stone. Built this outhouse as an outdoor pit stop, obviously, and also a little bit of tool storage, only to have it end up being completely taken over by my tools and stuff, so that now I can hardly move in here. Went through an absolutely massive amount of trouble and expense to have a phone line buried and encased in concrete underground, leading all the way from the nearest drivable road to our cabin in the woods, only to disconnect the phone line a year later when we switched to cell phone only. People have told me I'm a good carpenter, but that's because they haven't seen this beam end, which was supposed to be a flat, smooth cut. I love this maple tree growing near our cabin here, but I'm not so sure it loves me back after I hit it with the snowblower 2 winters ago. Left a pretty good scar. Forgot to put my plastic lawn chairs away, and there was a pretty good windstorm last night. Didn't get around to framing the walls and drying in this addition fast enough, and it's fall, so the subfloor is getting all wet with every rain, holding a lot of water. Thought I was being clever drilling these holes, but the holes have gotten plugged up so it can't drain. So now every morning I have to poke the holes with a screw, let the water drain out so that the plywood subfloor doesn't delaminate. Realized this propane gas line was going to be in the way of my new back deck, so I notched out the deck beam to make room for the gas line, only to find out I made my notch about 2 inches too big. Have the eaves of these 2 sections of roof meeting at the bottom of this valley here. Always forms tons of ice in winter, so I've tried to install some heating cables and a short length of eaves trough. Still forms tons of ice though. Not sure what I'm going to do about it. Another thing about this section of roof, in the eaves here, which I never properly sealed up, mice have been getting in, so I've had to stuff some copper mesh in there to prevent them from nesting inside the roof. Stored these extra insulation panels in my fabric shelter for the last couple of years, only to recently discover that mice found some of them and carpenter ants found the rest. Little ways over from the cabin, I used this extra mortar in this rock crack to engrave all our names, including our cat. Then we got a dog, but I'd run out of mortar and run out of rock crack. Stored my stepladder under the building last winter. The squirrels found it. When I was anchoring the frame of this section of deck to this stone foundation pillar, The rotary hammer I was using popped a stone completely off, and I had to use masonry epoxy to glue it back on. Wasn't exactly a neat job. I didn't clean my chimney soon enough, and the corrosive anthracite coal ash ate away at the base plate and corroded the attachment flanges for the chimney cap, so now it's just hanging there by a few strands of rusty metal. This particular foundation pier also turned out to be in completely the wrong spot, so I had to add to it with concrete, which didn't turn out attractive at all. Had the bright idea to weld these steel pipe stair railings together in the building, and that ended up with some nice burn marks all over the top of this custom built cherry stair tread that I did. Forgot to route grooves in the top of these beams for wires to supply these light fixtures, so I ended up having to thread the wires through copper pipe along the side of the beams here. While installing these spruce ceiling beams, I notched the end of them out to plug into the wall, but I cut the notch about 1.5 inches too long on this middle one. Thought I was being clever by building and installing these storage drawers in this bathroom nook, only to realize that I won't be able to install trim around the door now, or the drawers won't be able to open.
Dad, I think everything will be fine. You're a great builder.
Oh, thanks, sweetie.